Out of all of the things that I've said on this channel that have gotten me into trouble, this is going to be the most controversial. I don't mod my games. More specifically, and relevant to this channel, I play unmodded Skyrim. I go back to unmodded Skyrim all the time, and I enjoy it. I know, lock me up, throw away the key, but I believe that I deserve a fair trial, so hear me out first. Today I'm going to talk about why I personally don't mod my games, and why I enjoy playing them exactly as they were created by their original developers. Before we get started, hi, my name is Angelika, and I recently realized that nobody has any idea how to pronounce my channel name.
Angelikatosh, I think that's how to say it.
Angelikatosh.
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 Angel like Tosh? Please don't strike my video, Angle like a Tosh.
So this is probably my fault, but it's pronounced Angelikatosh. My name is Angelika, not Angelica, and I added Akatosh, the god from Elder Scrolls, to the end of it because you know what? I thought it was brilliant and easy when I did it, and I'm sorry, I didn't realize how complicated it would be. Anyways, as we've already established, this is quite a sensitive topic, and there are a few things that I want to make clear before we fully move on. Maybe I'll get a few people to delete their paragraphs that they've already started typing out. I don't have anything against the modding community. In fact, I have a very deep respect for what they do, and I'm glad they exist. I am. Without modders, we wouldn't have stuff like Sky Oblivion, which I'm very excited for and I will be playing, but then going even further back, there's a bunch of other things that wouldn't have existed, like Dota or Counter-Strike. I often cite the modding community as one of the main reasons that I think Skyrim has retained its popularity after all these years. I once heard somebody say that Skyrim would be nothing without mods. Here is where I personally disagree. To give you an idea of my personal history with mods, or Skyrim mods in particular, I did have a modding phase. A brief one, but it did happen. And this is actually something that one of you guys pointed out to me. I must have completely erased this from my memory, but I made a post on June 8th of 2015 saying, "My modded Skyrim is absolutely beautiful, TBH. As you can see, it is Whiterun with an insane amount of trees all over the place." I enjoyed this for a while, it was really fun. And I had a bunch of other mods that added cosmetics and some things in character creation, and also just a bunch of alterations to cities, a whole lot of trees everywhere. Moonpath to Elsewhere, does anybody remember that? I still have dreams about Moonpath to Elsewhere. So I've tried mods, and my brother even created mods for a while. There was actually this one that was quite popular, it had quite a few downloads, but the issue with it was that he made a patch that moved the entirety of Riverwood an inch to the left and broke everybody's Skyrim. The consequences were dire. But eventually, I started to get this feeling whenever I was walking around my modded Skyrim that it wasn't right for me. It all felt so out of place, to the point that where even a mod that added some items to an interior that weren't part of the original just wasn't something that I could vibe with. I started to really enjoy the game again when I played a fully stripped off version, and I went back to Skyrim on the PS3, where at the time I actually didn't even have Dawnguard installed. So besides a few patches, that was probably as vanilla as it gets. I was seeing the world exactly as it was meant to be. I felt so much more immersed in the game, knowing that everything that I am seeing and experiencing is exactly how the developers intended the world to look. And there was no distraction from getting an understanding of life in Skyrim, the fashion, the food, the people, all of the little things that I went on to make videos about on this channel years later. I feel like maybe I wouldn't have made this channel with videos like this if I was somebody that was heavily into modding. Knowing myself, and this is probably just a personal thing, but I feel like I would get so mixed up between what's actually canon and what's modded that I would lose touch with the original essence of Skyrim. I love seeing the world through the lens of its creators. Interpret what I'm seeing as intentional, no matter how big or small, because that's what helps me gain that very specific understanding of the world that maybe a lot of people overlook or disregard. I am often very critical of Skyrim, and if you've followed this channel for a while, you probably know this. I talk about its shortcomings quite a lot, and yet, despite that, I just cannot bring myself to mod the game to fix those shortcomings or even enhance the game in places where it desperately needed more attention in the original. Skyrim is perfect in its imperfect state. This is something that even people who do mod the game know, because if it was so terrible by itself, I doubt that people would bother getting so creative and adding so much to it. There must be something there, even for the person that has modded the game up to its eyeballs, that inspires them to do that. Skyrim is more than just its gameplay and its general look. It's about how the lore, the soundtrack, the characters, the quests, and all of the tiny things in between bring that gameplay and general look to life. There's so much to ponder on and explore, so many things to speculate about and theorize, and for me personally, adding a modded layer on top of that would take away from having that real canon understanding and opportunity to be able to properly theorize myself. One thing that I've talked about on this channel quite often is game clothing, because I feel like that's something that gamers often completely overlook. But in reality, it tells us so much about the world and the people that live there, about their culture. I enjoy looking for clues about their lives in things like the clothing, because that's just the way my brain works. One other thing that's like a real special interest of mine is beauty standards in games. It is only thanks to experiencing the game with its exact original look that I was really able to dive into this topic. Like in the case of the beauty standards in Elder Scrolls video, I went back to the earliest games and talked about the standards based on what was trending in our real world at the time of the release of a particular game, as well as the things that I believe are canon to the in-game universe without our real-world intervention. It allowed for so much freedom to dive into these topics, again, in a way that I just don't think that I would have been able to do if I had mods that altered the appearances or maybe added a bunch of clothing that didn't exist in the game already. It would be kind of embarrassing to create a whole video about clothing in Oblivion with that added context of this is what the clothing tells us about their culture, about their way of life, about their status, when in reality the clothing that I'm talking about is just something that a fan added, and it's somebody else's interpretation and not one that's necessarily canon to the world. I think that modders are really talented and they create some amazing things for a world that really does feel like it's lacking in a lot of ways, but at the same time, for me, it's almost like I cannot get past that fan fiction feeling that I get when I see mods. Like, no matter how cool something looks, if I know that it wasn't part of the original or if it wasn't something that developers themselves released, I lose interest. And not because it's bad, but just it's a personal preference. But I also think that my continued refusal to mod my game is something that allows me to see things that maybe you guys have missed. Last year, I did a video on art in Skyrim titled "Why Is There No Art in Skyrim?" where I talk about the lack of paintings. One of the most common comments on that video was, "Oh my god, I didn't notice that before you mentioned it. That's so weird." And I cannot say that that's the case for everybody, but I'm sure that there's a percentage of the people that commented that who didn't notice that there weren't any paintings in Skyrim because they just have mods that added paintings. Now, I know a lot of you guys are probably watching this and thinking, oh my god, she is so stubborn, but I do have exceptions when it comes to mods. For example, I didn't mind getting something to enhance the look of my Morrowind a little bit, or a small UI improvement here and there, but even as far as improving graphics, I never really went that deep with all of it in the case of Skyrim. Hot take, I like how the world in Skyrim looks. No, I don't like it as much as I like Oblivion or even Morrowind. And yes, the color palette is a bit dull, and I sometimes wish that there was more color. But if this is how it originally looks, then I prefer that to just inserting a bunch of mods that enhance or add more vibrant colors. Honestly, it made those times where I did find vibrant, saturated colors a lot more impactful, memorable, and special. Colors are like treasures in this game, as is every other kind of unique looking item and thing that adds flavor to a world that is quite gritty and bleak in a lot of places. If I add a mod that gives me access to brightly colored cosmetics and a bunch of other bright, vibrant things that weren't originally a part of Skyrim, it almost makes those other things less special because, of course, a lot of the modded items look way better than items that were originally part of the game. For me, mods just interfered with the integrity of my experience in Skyrim, which I know for a lot of people really does not matter. And you know what? If you're one of those people, honestly, good for you. Because I know that I'm definitely missing out in places where I probably could get more enjoyment out of the game if I wasn't so stubborn. But maybe one day I will, who knows? There's one thing that I'm a bit worried about, just considering how big the modding scene is in Skyrim, that The Elder Scrolls 6 will be even more shallow than its predecessor. And there will be this idea behind the game that, well, it's okay because modders will fill in the gaps. Did anybody see that with Starfield, for example? That there was just a lot of empty space in the game, and whenever somebody talked about it, there was always someone in that conversation saying, well, it's fine because modders will just do the rest of the work. I would hate the idea that going forward, Bethesda will rely so much on mods that they won't see the need to go beyond surface level in the creation of their worlds. Last time I talked about not modding my games, somebody brought up Turtle WoW and how I mentioned that I do like what they did with Classic Azeroth. And the reason that I like it is because for me that's just different. I think that Classic Azeroth is a canvas that is much more flexible in terms of having more stuff added to it that wasn't there before. Starting from the fact that Skyrim is a single player experience with this set world where the only real variable is yourself, but all of the NPCs are voiced and things are a bit static even, and they're exactly the same each time. Whereas in WoW, an MMO, you've got a world that you share with a ton of people at any given time. So even going to all of the same locations, you'll see something different every time. Maybe there will be an elf on the mailbox. Maybe the Horde will come over to cause chaos. Maybe you will make a friend for life. I feel that for me personally, with my preferences, I am much more accepting of additions to this world exactly in the way that the Turtle WoW team have done them because they just feel so seamless. There are certain parts on that server that if you see them, they'll have you wondering like, hey, was that really not a part of the original? And perhaps that does also interfere with my perception of the original Azeroth in the same way that I mentioned Skyrim mods do in Skyrim, but here they just don't feel as out of place or like an eyesore. Classic WoW in general is just a lot easier to add to, considering things like zones that weren't accessible in the original and cut content. Mods are fantastic, the people behind them are usually very talented and creative, and in general it's great to see the community flourish even if I don't directly participate. More than anything, this video is just a way for you guys to get to know me a little bit better, but I guess it's also a way for me to see if there's anybody else out there that thinks the way that I do about these things or that also refuses to mod their games. And do you mod your games? Or if you don't, do you have exceptions like Turtle WoW? But yeah, that's about it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. As always, big thank you to my channel members, and I'll see you all in the next video. Be seeing you. Bye.